Tonight we're gonna delve deep into more Reddit stories. Check the part 1 of the video to see more about it. It will appear in the card above. So, pick something to drink, some snack, and get comfortable for these terrorizing stories. The suicide room. That's what they call room 733, as if I didn't have enough to worry about on my first day as a freshman. We had assigned to dorm room 734, which, it turns out, wasn't one of the nice add-on rooms in the South Hall. No, we found ourselves in the older wing of the building on the 7th floor. I wasn't too bummed out, though. At least they'd honored my request to room with my best friend. Lydia and I spent most of the morning moving ourselves in. By the time our resident advisor came by, I was taping up posters and Lydia was reading. "Hi girls, I'm Beth," chirped the bubbly blonde girl as she bounded into our room. "I'll be your RA this year." "Hi," I nodded at her. "Wow, you girls really work fast," she said, taking in our made beds and hung up clothes. Beth picked up a drawing of Cthulhu that Lydia had done over the summer. She turned it sideways, studying it. "Is this the Kraken from Pirates of the Caribbean?" Lydia glared at her over the top of her book. "So anyway," the RA continued, "I know our hall isn't as new as the South Hall, but trust me, there's a lot of history here. This building is almost 60 years old." "Yes, I can see that," I said, looking around. "The rooms are pretty small." "Well, people were smaller in the 50s. Beth shrugged. "Really?" Lydia said flatly. "Yep, really." Beth pursed her lips and just continued to stand there, while the room filled with awkward silence. "So," I said, "the corner room next to us, 733, is it? It looks a lot bigger than our room. Is anyone assigned to that room, or could we maybe dash?" "Oh, you don't want that room," Beth interrupted. "There were a couple suicides in there. A hanging and a jumper, if I remember right. They're not assigning anyone to that room. Anyway, I'd just like to remind you that this is an all-girls floor and guys are not allowed up here after 11. Before we could reply to her, Beth clapped her hands, and with a quick, "Well, nice meeting you," she skipped out of the room. Lydia dropped her book on the bed and stared out into the hall. "I hate her. Did you hear that bomb she fucking dropped? I'm going to call her dumb shit Beth." "Lydia, seriously? Suicides? Oh, Becca, relax. Every college campus has a few suicides." "Yeah, but in the same room?" Lydia sighed. "Really, who cares? It's not our room." "Yeah, I guess." I turned to study the little window in our room. Can you imagine climbing out of that tiny window and jumping? You'd be alive for at least 5 seconds before you hit the ground. "Oh, fuck, Becca, can you not?" Lydia glanced at the window and visibly shuddered. "You know I fucking hate heights, and just talking about that shit is raising my blood pressure. We could always move into the suicide room," I teased her. "That one has a window on each wall." "Fuck you." Okay. But seriously, think about it. It would take a lot of commitment to squeeze out of that tiny window. "Yeah, well, remember, people were apparently smaller back then." Lydia mumbled as she pushed her bed further away from the window. Since Lydia was an outgoing and friendly person, we made friends at lightning speed. There were a lot of parties in those first few weeks, at one of which Lydia inevitably met a guy. I'd known the girl since we were in diapers, so I fully anticipated her having a boyfriend by the end of September. His name was Mike, and he wasn't anything special, just your standard frat pledge douche canoe. After about a month on campus, the novelty of college started wearing off. Lydia and I found our stride, and we spent more weekends studying than drinking. Midterms were coming up in a couple weeks, and I was determined to maintain a 4.0 GPA throughout my freshman year. One night in early October, I was woken up by a loud, grinding sound. I sat up in bed and strained to hear it again. Lydia was also wide awake and listening. Slam. "What the fuck?" she mouthed to me. It wasn't unusual for there to be noise in the hallways since other people came in at all hours of the night. But this sound had definitely come from next door, the corner room. Grind. Is that Dash? Yeah, Lydia whispered. That's the window next door. At Lydia's insistence, we kept our window closed at all times. However, there was no mistaking the sound of the window in room 733 being opened and closed again at regular intervals. Slam. Who's in there? Lydia shrugged. Is someone fucking with us? Is this like initiation? Lydia raised her eyebrow at me. Initiation to what? I don't know. College? Maybe they're hazing the freshmen? Grind, it opened. Who is hazing freshmen? I shrugged. Slam, it shut. Becca, I love you, but that was fucking stupid. I threw a pillow at her. Well, whoever it is, go tell them to knock it the fuck off. Me? I'm not risking being thrown out a window. Grind. Well, I'm not doing it. I'm an art major. You're a political science major. You go lay down the law. Fuck that. Then call dumb shit Beth. Isn't this the kind of nonsense she should deal with? Slam. I'm not calling her. Don't you put that evil on me. Fine, Lydia whispered loudly, then we'll just have to ignore it. I have class at 7:30. I whispered. Grind. Then do something. Ugh. I got out of bed and stomped to the door, threw it open dramatically, and went down the hall to pound on the door to room 733, which simply said supply room. People are trying to sleep. Please fucking stop. I said when there was no answer. Slam. Dude, seriously. I sighed. I stepped back from the door and immediately noticed problem. Room 733 was padlocked shut from the outside. I hurried back to my room. What happened? Lydia asked. I'm not going anywhere near that fucking room again. It's locked from the outside. I don't know how anybody could get in there. So, you're saying it's a spooky ghost? She laughed. No, I'm saying there is creepy shit going on inside a room colloquially called the suicide room. Lydia scoffed and rolled over to go back to sleep. You should have been a drama major. We didn't hear the window next door again that night, but the next morning you could clearly see from outside that both windows in the corner room were now wide open. I watched the windows on room 733 for an entire week, but they remained open. Occasionally at night, I thought I could hear a noise next door like marbles dropping and rolling across the floor. Since it never woke Lydia up, I didn't bother to say anything. One afternoon, I was alone in the dorm editing notes on my laptop. I had my headphones in, but the music wasn't loud enough to cover the noise of someone knocking on the door. Come in, I said without looking up from the screen. A moment went by and then I heard the knocking again. I jerked my earbuds out and slammed the laptop closed. I turned around, come Dash. What the fuck? The door to the hallway was wide open. I'd left it open on purpose since Ian, a junior I was dating, was supposed to be stopping by. I heard the knocking again from behind me and literally jumped out of my chair. It had come from the other side of the room, the closet door. It was the closet that shared a wall with room 733. Lydia, you're not fucking funny. Nothing. Lydia, I swear to God, I will punch you in your face. Silence. I walked over to the closet door and grasped the handle. Lydia, you're a fucking Dash. A fucking what? Her voice came from the doorway, behind me. I let go of the doorknob and stumbled back, wide-eyed. Lydia threw her stuff on the bed and turned to me, crossing her arms. I'm a fucking what? I thought you were hiding in the closet. I said, lamely. What? Why? Because someone was knocking on the door. Jesus, Becca. Lydia rubbed her forehead and walked over to the closet, throwing open the door. There was nothing there but clothes and boxes. She made a swipe of her arm as if to say, "What now?" I swear dash. Becca, there's no one here. I know what I heard. We glared at each other until our little standoff was interrupted by the timely arrival of Ian. He immediately sensed the tension in the room. "Hi, ladies. What's new?" I gave my roommate a hostile look. There's strange shit is going on in that room next door. But that's not new. Which room? 735? Or the empty one? The empty one. Lydia emphasized. 733, yeah, I'm not surprised. That's the suicide room. Right, we heard about the deaths. I sat down on my bed. Yeah, it's pretty fucked up. 3 suicides all in one dorm room. 3? Lydia raised her eyebrow. We were told there were 2. Well, there were a couple people in the 70s and then some guy about 10 years ago. He jumped out the window. Lydia and I both shuddered. Although she was much worse, we were both terrified of heights. A falling death was about the worst thing I could think of. I will admit that 3 suicides in the same dorm room is fucking disturbing. Lydia said in an apologetic tone. Yeah, I heard there's something in that room. Ian said. Like what? No one knows, but every year someone has a new theory. Usually right around Halloween something gets published in the campus paper. Whatever is in there, though, it ain't friendly. So, has anyone ever killed themselves in the neighboring rooms? Like this one? Nah, just 733. Honestly, I was surprised when I heard they were opening the North Hall this year. They told us we were the biggest incoming freshman class in 20 years. I said absent-mindedly. Yeah, I heard that, too. You know you could request a room change. Ian sat down on the bed next to me and I leaned against his shoulder. Yeah, but they wouldn't keep us together. Lydia cut in. Becca and I have been best friends for 15 years. We can't room with other people. So should we just keep living here, next to Satan? I glanced at the closet door again. Lydia shrugged. At least we'll have some stories to tell after graduation. These aren't the kind of stories I want to tell. A few days later, Lydia began to believe my closet story. I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of someone whispering. I looked over at Lydia, who was already staring at me with wide eyes. She slowly brought a finger to her lips. I listened intently, trying to hear what the voice was saying and where it was coming from, but I couldn't understand even one word. I got out of my bed and tiptoed over to Lydia's. The whispering was definitely louder over there, but then she shared a wall with room 733. I listened harder. Never taken mouths of fools. What the hell? Lydia leaned over and put her ear up to the wall. The whispers suddenly stopped and I leaned closer. Suddenly there was a loud bang from the other side. Lydia immediately recoiled and clutched her ear in pain. Someone was in there. Suddenly more angry than scared, I again threw open our door and stomped over to the supposedly empty supply room. I banged on the door loudly, not caring who else I woke up at this point. Are you fucking kidding me? I yelled at the door. This shit isn't funny anymore. Come out of that fucking room, you asshole. Silence. And then the doorknob started to turn. I don't know what I'd expected to happen, but it wasn't that. I backed up so far from the door that I ran into the opposite wall. When the handle had turned all the way down, something started to push from the other side. The door groaned loudly, but the locks held. I held my breath until the pressure on the door subsided and the handle slowly returned to its normal position. I noticed Lydia peeking her head out of our room. She held up her hands as if to say, what happened? Someone thinks they're funny. I answered her out loud. She shook her head and disappeared back into our room. I knelt down on the floor and brought my head down to the carpet, peering under the door crack. It was the first time I had seen into the corner room. Room 733 was definitely a supply closet. There were chairs stacked along one wall and bed frames along the other. A few rotting mattresses were piled under one of the windows, and a thick layer of dust covered everything in the room. The windows were absolutely huge, which was something you couldn't really tell by looking up at the building. They were open as always, and I could definitely see how someone could easily climb through them to the outside ledge. The room didn't look like it had been disturbed in a couple of decades, which sent a shudder racking through my body. The moonlight, which had been providing enough light to see into the room, suddenly vanished, and I saw only pitch black inside. I blinked rapidly, trying to adjust my night vision. I squeezed my eyes shut, and when I opened them, a large yellow eye was looking back at me, only a few inches away from my face on the other side of the door. I screamed and woke up half the dorm. There was no denying that things were escalating. The next morning, Lydia and I put in dorm change requests with resident services and hoped for the best. In the meantime, we agreed to never be alone in our dorm room at night. Either we both spent the night at home or neither of us did. We started spending most nights with our respective boyfriends. I told Ian everything that had happened, and he suggested I maybe talk to the campus paranormal society. I hesitantly made an appointment, and Lydia and I met with a small, cleanly dressed kid named Craig and 4 of his colleagues the following Tuesday. We told them everything we could remember, every incident, no matter how small. Craig and the 4 other members of the paranormal society sat quietly and took notes for half an hour. It wasn't until we finished that anyone spoke. "Is that all?" Craig asked. "Yes," I said slowly. "Would you mind waiting out in the hall for a few minutes so that I may confer with my colleagues?" "Sure," Lydia smiled indulgently and stood up. "Whatever you need." The door had barely shut behind us when Lydia snorted and rolled her eyes. "Let's go." "Go where?" I asked. "Are you serious?" "Lydia, come on, we need help. I am freaking out. We haven't stayed one night in our dorm since Thursday, so this isn't something we can just brush off." "Okay." She threw her hands up. "Let's hear what they have to say, and then we can go over to resident services and check on our move requests." We loitered out in the hallway for another 15 minutes before Craig came out and asked us to come back and take a seat. With all the pomp and circumstance of a meeting of Parliament, Craig cleared his throat and made his diagnosis. "What you're dealing with, ladies, is a very angry ghost." "Is that your professional opinion, Craig?" Lydia said. I shot her a look. "Why, yes," he stuttered. "A vengeful spirit dash." "A spirit?" I asked. I very much doubted that that's what we were dealing with. "Yes," answered one of the not Craigs. "That's ghost to the layperson." "Jesus Christ," Lydia groaned and rubbed her temples, mistaking Lydia's frustration with despair. Craig rushed right into his speech. "Don't be afraid, ladies, we're going to take care of you. It's true that spirits can be quite a headache if you don't know how to exorcise them, which is why it's good you came to us. Suicides almost always result in angry ghosts. They need revenge." "Revenge on whom?" I asked. "On other students. Perhaps this particular spirit was bullied into taking his own life and now seeks to torment others." Listen, Dash. We can take care of this for you right away. All we ask is a small donation to the society, Craig continued. We honestly didn't realize that room was having this much activity. It's really very exciting. Great. Well, thank you for your time, Lydia said as she grabbed my hand and pulled me out of my chair. Do you want to set something up for this weekend? Craig asked. Tell you what, we'll call you. Lydia hurried me out of the room wearing a weary look, and we didn't speak again until we were almost to the admin building. That was a waste of time. She said, Look, I'm not disagreeing with you, but Dash. Becca, tell me you didn't honestly buy into that? So you don't think it's I was having trouble even saying the word, it sounded so ridiculous. Ghost? Well, I don't fucking know, but neither do they. That guy had no idea what the fuck he was talking about. I pulled my hood lower over my eyes as we stepped into line at the resident services desk. Let me put it this way. Lydia continued. They're playing Ghostbusters and we're asterisk living asterisk the fucking exorcist. Fine, I sighed. Then what do you want to do? Just keep sleeping at Mike and Ian's until we get reassigned? I just want this to end. Lydia crossed her arms and stared straight ahead. We all wanted this to end. Even if living next to that fucking room wasn't scary, it was sure as hell distracting. Alright, well, I mean we're probably safe during daylight hours, so as long as we don't spend nights there we should be okay. Our room is only ghost adjacent after all, and our new assignments will come through soon. I checked my watch. Fuck, it's almost 2. Shit, really? I gotta go. Mike got accepted to Sigma Chi, and he's getting initiated today. Oh yeah, I forgot he rushed. The girl at the desk waved us forward. I hadn't even realized we'd reached the front of the line. Let me know what they say, Lydia said as she ran out the door. The girl at the desk eyed me suspiciously as I approached. Hi, I'm Dash. You're the girl trying to move out of 734 in Riley, aren't you? She'd caught me off guard. Yeah, one of them. How'd you know? Sorry, I overheard you. I also saw your file cross my desk a few days ago, and I gotta ask, why are you looking to transfer rooms, exactly? I was tired. I was beaten down. I didn't have the energy to think of a lie. Because shit is going on in the empty room next door, and it's really freaking us out. Noises, whispers, knocking. The other night I saw someone. You saw someone? Yeah. In room 733? Yeah. I looked under the door. There was definitely someone in there. The girl narrowed her eyes at me for a moment and then nodded for no particular reason. Well, your rooms aren't ready yet, but I've pushed them through as a priority. For right now you're stuck, though. There just isn't anywhere else to put you. I sighed. I'd figured as much. I'm Alice, she continued, and, look, I've actually done a lot of research on the Riley suicides, and I think I can help you. Or at the very least offer some insight. Really? I asked, hesitantly. Absolutely. I'm in Taylor Hall, room 310. I'll be back to my dorm by 4 today. Thanks. We just came from the Paranormal Society on campus. Ugh, say no more, Alice rolled her eyes. Yeah, so, I'll definitely see you at 4. Great, Alice said, and smiled. I was early to Taylor, but then so was she. I told our story for the second time that day, and Alice wasn't afraid to interrupt with questions, though her queries didn't betray her thoughts. When I was finished, she leaned back in her chair and sighed deeply. I can't believe it, she shook her head. I'd always heard rumors, but I honestly doubted any of it was true. I can assure you, everything I've told you is absolutely true. And how is it now? When you're there? We aren't ever there at night, but during the day we've heard scratching on the wall, really quiet whispering, and sometimes we still hear the window opening and closing. In broad fucking daylight. However, every time I look up from the street, the windows to 733 are open. Alice nodded. Well, for the record, I don't think you're in any danger. As much as it sucks, you guys are simply a casualty. You just need to stay out of room 733. I snorted. Are you kidding? I would never go in there. I believe that you believe that. But this thing, whatever it is, it's tricky. Manipulative. A liar. And it's smarter than you. I'll try not to be offended by that. You shouldn't be. What do you think it is? Something very old and very evil. I regarded her skeptically and then let my eyes wander around the room. I hadn't really noticed the decor before, but to say Alice had an interest in the occult was an understatement. I can't see any situation where I would be compelled to enter that room. I know. But you have to be prepared that there may come a time when you have to make a decision about entering that room. Because what you're dealing with? It's already killed 5 people. 5? I thought it was 3. Yeah, well, not everyone is inclined to do the level of research that I do. Let's see, there was Ellen Burnham in 1961. She jumped out the window. She was the very first. And then Tad Collinsworth in 1968, he jumped, too. Marissa Grigg in 1975, she hung herself. Erin Murphy in 1979, she jumped. And then Eric Dowson in 1992, he hung himself. 5 suicides. How could the university still let people live in there? They don't, apparently. That's why it's a supply room. And back then? Well, every few years, once everyone who would remember had graduated, the room would be reassigned. This was before the internet, you know, and the incoming freshmen were clueless. But after that last one, Eric Dowson, they closed the entire North Hall of the 7th floor and built more rooms onto the South Hall. So, what does it want? Alice shrugged. Chaos. Death. Souls. Who knows? No one even knows what it is. Okay, so what do we know? We know that it's somehow bound to that room, though it seems to have minimal influence just outside of it. We know that everyone who ever died was alone at the time. And we know that it's a trickster. That's what we know. It wasn't enough. Why do you think they do it? I asked quietly. The victims? I nodded. All I know is what's rumored to be in the evidence files. All the suicides were found with pictures or writings that were considered unspeakable at the time. They contained horrible, evil things that would make you physically sick to read or see, they say. And these people, they drew them? They wrote that stuff? Yep. Whatever is in that room drove them mad. That's fucking terrifying. Have you guys considered getting somebody to bless the room? Jesus. Well, you'll have a hard time getting him, but perhaps some other sort of holy person. No, I mean, Jesus, you're talking about an exorcism. Alice shrugged. Maybe. The rumor in the 70s was that this all started with a Ouija board game gone wrong in 1961. Really? That shit's made by Hasbro. Not in the 60s it wasn't. Anyway, it's just a rumor. The only person on campus who would know is Tom Moan in admin. I've tried to talk to him before, but he refuses to see me. Did he go here in 1961? Yes. And he was staying in Riley. We need to talk to him. I need to know what the fuck is happening, or I won't be able to live the rest of my life as a well-adjusted person. I suppose we can try to chase him down on campus. Can we talk to him tomorrow? We can try. Mr. Moan wouldn't see us that day or the next. We tried to catch him on his lunch hour and then again while he was leaving work, but he got around us every time. It was soon clear that the old man was actively avoiding us. Lydia and I had seen little of each other since we continued to sleep in other dorms. I went back to our room twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. Usually the other room was silent, but that didn't make me feel better. I could always sense something on the other side of the wall, somehow watching me. It felt like the calm before the storm. The Thursday before Halloween, I came back to the dorm to shower in the evening, much later than usual. I'd seen Lydia that afternoon, and she'd informed me that she had enough clothes stored at Mike's to last until graduation, so I knew I'd be there alone. I showered down the hall in the safety of the bathrooms and then walked back to my room to change. I was supposed to meet Ian in half an hour to head out to a party, and I wanted to get out of here as quick as possible. Since the silence was unnerving me, I threw my iPod on the docking station and turned up AC/DC. I got dressed and then stood in front of the mirror to dry my hair. I flipped my head over and blow-dried upside down to try and give my hair some volume. When I flipped my head back up and shut off the blow-dryer, I immediately noticed the silence in the room. But that wasn't all I noticed. I wasn't in my dorm anymore. Behind me was reflected the dusty bed frames and large open windows of room 733. I spun around in a panic to find that I was actually standing in my own room. I looked back at the mirror to see that 733 still reflected there. A slight movement behind me was all it took to make me run. I grabbed my purse and phone and I fled from my room, slamming the door behind me. On the elevator ride down, I called Alice. "I can't do it anymore," I said when she picked up. "I can't go back in that room again. I can't ever go back." "What happened?" I told her. "Jesus. What do you want to do?" she asked. "I need to talk to someone who knows what the fuck is going on. Is Tom Moan the only person we know was here in 1961? The only one I know of. Maybe we can get him on his way in tomorrow morning? We'll just corner him and refuse to move until he tells us something. He comes in at 6:30 according to the schedule I have. Do you want to meet me outside the Starbucks in the atrium?" "Fuck yeah, I do. I have a class at 7:30, but I'll blow it off." "Okay. See you then." I wasn't usually much for parties, but I was glad I was going to one that night. As soon as we got there, I asked Ian to get me a drink. Since I wasn't usually much of a drinker, he gave me a raised eyebrow. I gave him a brief synopsis of what had happened earlier, hoping he wouldn't think I was crazy. Ian made me a scotch and Coke. It was the first of many. Around midnight, I went to have a cigarette and checked my phone. I had a voicemail from Lydia left at 11:04 p.m. "Hey Becca, listen, I just had a huge fucking fight with Mike. I guess his frat decided that for Halloween this year, all the new brothers have to spend the night in the suicide room. In our dorm. I can't fucking take it. He knows what's been going on with us, and he still agreed to do this. He's now trying to convince me that Sigma Chi is behind all of the stuff going on in room 733 because they've been trying to drum up buzz for their Halloween deal. I can't dash." I hit end and threw my phone in my bag. No wonder Lydia was pissed. This was not good. Not good at all. I found Ian inside and asked him to take me home. I was suddenly very stressed, very tired, and very drunk. When the alarm went off at 6 a.m., it took everything I had to pull myself out of bed. I got dressed in the clothes I'd worn the night before and shuffled my way across campus to the atrium. Alice was already there with a black coffee in hand. "I figured you'd need this," she laughed. "How'd you know?" "Your texts. I texted you last night?" "Yeah, at about 1. You told me about Sigma Chi." "Oh, God, yeah." I pushed my sunglasses higher up my nose and pulled my hood lower over my eyes. "Those guys are idiots. Remember how I told you that it's crafty? Well, what if the point of messing with you was to make 733 provocative, to seduce people into going inside? No one has been in that room for years. Can you imagine how hungry that thing is? Do you think they're really at risk?" I asked as I sat down on the steps to the admin building. "Yeah. In fact, the only thing they have going for them is that all those suicide victims were alone at the time of their deaths. So, it'll be less powerful with all of them there? Theoretically. We would know a lot more if we knew what it was. And we can't know what it is without knowing how it got here. And that is why we need Moan. What time is he supposed to get here?" "Actually, 20 minutes ago," Alice said, grimly. It was another half an hour before we resigned ourselves to the fact that Mr. Moan had snuck around us as usual. We went to the front office hoping to beg again for an appointment with him anyway. The woman at the admin desk regarded us coldly. "Tom isn't coming in today. Or any other day for that matter. He quit yesterday. Looks like you won't be harassing him anymore." "We weren't harassing him," I said. "We just desperately needed to talk to him." "We still do," added Alice. "Well, you won't get any of his personal information from me," she said snidely and walked away. "What the fuck do we do now?" I asked Alice. "Without Tom Moan, there's nothing left to do." "Alice, fuck, I can't go back into that room." "Well, then I guess it's good your transfers came through." "They did?" "Yep. I got the notice when I checked my work email this morning. You're going to Morton and Lydia is going to Tinsley. Oh, thank God. I thought you'd be happy about that. I also convinced my boss not to assign anyone else to room 734. Thank fuck. The only thing is you won't be able to move until Monday. I can last through the weekend, especially now that the end is in sight. I have to tell Lydia. I opened my phone to pull up Lydia's number, but my attention was caught by the red 1 badge over the voicemail logo. I hit play. It was the rest of the message from last night. Even look at his dumb fucking face anymore, so I'm going to head home. Don't worry about me, I'll be okay. I'm drunk enough to sleep through any bullshit from next door. I'm just so fucking pissed off right now. I would honestly rather deal with dumb shit Beth than Michael. My parents must be siblings because I'm that fucking retarded Benson. Let's hang out tomorrow. Love ya. The message ended. God damn it. Alice gave me a questioning look. Lydia spent the night in our dorm. Alice cringed. She's safe though, right? As long as she doesn't go into 733. She won't. I thought of the always open large windows of the corner room. If nothing else, the mere thought of those would keep Lydia the hell out of that room. Good. Well, since we have nothing else to do you want to go look for theology books in the library? It's pretty much the only thing open right now. Sure, I shrugged. I didn't have another class until 10. The little old lady who sat behind the library's checkout desk must have been 1,000 years old. Miss Stapley's eyes were small and watery, and her skin looked like it was melting off of her skull. Still, she was nice and knowledgeable, and she sent us in the right direction for books on demonology, though she gave us a curious look as she did. There wasn't much. We read everything we could, but it either wasn't relevant or wasn't in English. We returned to her desk 30 minutes later. Do you have anything on the occult? The occult? Her voice trailed off. Yes, I do. Over there to the left of the reference section. Okay, thanks. Sorry, I'm too hungover to use the Dewey Decimal System, I said. I don't think she likes the look of us, Alice whispered as we walked away. Our look or our subject matter? Probably neither. Within the hour we were back up at her desk, having struck out again. We could tell she was getting annoyed as her eyes narrowed suspiciously at us as we approached. Sorry, do you know where we could find something on seances or Ouija boards or Dash? Now listen, girls. Miss Stapley stood up from her desk and looked over her glasses at us. I really hope this is for class. It is, I said. It's not, Alice answered simultaneously. It's personal research. Research? What kind of research? Look, we're not going to mess with a Ouija board or anything. I said. Good, Miss Stapley smoothed her pleated pants and sat back down. Because I can't have that sort of thing going on here again. Again? Alice latched on. The older woman suddenly looked very uncomfortable and started fidgeting with a stack of books on her desk. We may have something on seances in Dash. Miss Stapley, we're researching what happened in Riley in 1961. Alice interrupted. And also what's been happening there ever since. Well, it's no secret, is it? A student committed suicide in that room. Dreadful, but not unheard of on a university campus. 5 students. I corrected her. But you know that, right? Alice was suddenly talking very fast. Because you sound like you're well versed in this story. Please, tell us how this started and we might be able to end it. End it? Miss Stapley's voice became quieter but more concentrated. Don't be so arrogant, young lady. You can't end it. People have always died in that room and they always will. There's no end to it, so you'd best stay far away from it. But maybe if we knew how this all started, Dash. It started just as you think it did. But everyone that was involved is either very old or very dead by now. Just stay away from that room. Concentrate on your studies. I leaned over her desk. Well, I'd love to, but they assigned my friend and me to the room next door. Maybe you can forget about all the suicides, but we can't. It won't fucking let us. Young lady, I never forget. Miss Stapley's voice was even quieter now. My friend Ellen was the very first to be killed in that room. She was my very best friend, and not a night goes by that I don't imagine her wiggling out of that tiny window, standing upon the cold ledge in her bare feet and jumping off the 7th floor of that building. Alice sighed. I'm really sorry. I didn't know. Yes, well, these are old wounds, my dear. Now, girls, I suggest you request a room reassignment immediately. No one should be living on the 7th floor of that building. And that's all I'm going to tell you about it. Alice sighed but resigned herself to a nod. We wouldn't learn anything more here. Still, it was quite a breakthrough. At least we had some information now. Alice walked away and I made to follow her, but my feet wouldn't move. Something was bothering me. The small yet poignant word had been buried in Miss Stapley's story, a word that suddenly seemed very important. Miss Stapley, I asked the tired, old woman at the desk, why did you refer to the windows in 733 tiny? Because I've seen those windows and they're huge, like 5 feet tall. Dear, you're thinking of the corner room. That's the supply closet. Room 733 is next door to that. No, I stuttered, that's room 734. Yes, well, it is now. When they built the additional rooms onto the south hall, they moved all the room numbers down. Oh my God. I suddenly felt very hot and very dizzy. That sneaky fucker, Alice whispered next to me, her skin paling. Lydia. We took off across the campus at a dead run, witnessed only by the few bleary-eyed students on their way to morning classes. When Riley finally came into view, I stumbled on the pavement as my blood turned to ice. From our vantage point, we could clearly see the windows of the corner room were closed, the first and only time I had ever seen that way. And the window to my room was open. We ran into the lobby, pushing past several latte-sipping, boot-wearing freshmen who had just gotten off the elevator. I hit 7 and watched the doors close more slowly than they ever had before. I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. Alice, how the fuck did this happen? I don't know. I don't fucking know. She's been in there all night, Alice. In our room. Alone. Alice shook her head but had nothing to say. When the doors finally opened on floor 7, we saw a quiet, deserted hallway. I ran toward my room with Alice right behind me. Rounding the corner, I threw open my door hoping it wasn't locked. And it wasn't. Lydia looked back at me. And for one breathless moment, cruel glimmer of hope crossed over her tear-streaked face. But it was too late. The next second, she leaned forward so slightly, and she was gone. She screamed the entire way down. Alice ran to the ledge where Lydia had just been while I stood motionless. She stuck her head out the window and looked down just as a different kind of screaming started from the bottom floor. Alice closed her hand over her mouth and pulled her head back into the room as tears of shock ran down her ghost-white face. The screaming from outside got louder as more people saw what remained of my best friend on the cold pavement. I leaned back against the dresser and slumped to the floor. A falling death. Lydia never wanted a falling death. I absent-mindedly picked up one of the pictures that were strewn all over the floor. It was a picture of Lydia's mother. She was dead. I picked up another picture. It was Lydia's baby sister. She was dead, too. There were dozens of pictures just like it all over the floors. Lydia has been busy last night. As for the things depicted in them, I cannot tell you. Lydia was a talented artist, and I only saw a few before I got sick on the floor next to me. Alice was standing in the doorway yelling something down the hall. I don't know what she was saying because all I could hear was a high-pitched whine in the room. Suddenly a piece of paper slid out from under the crack in the closet door and glided across the floor toward me. I picked it up and studied it for a moment. This was drawn by Lydia too, but it wasn't like the others. It was a picture of the closet from my exact vantage point. In the drawing, the door was cracked and there was something looking back from the darkness. I put the paper down and studied the closet. The door was cracked open just like the picture. I squinted my eyes and tried to see inside. Just as I started to distinguish the defined lines of a long face looking back at me, Alice pulled me to my feet. "We need to get out of here," I thought I heard her say. I never went back into that room. My parents moved my things and I spent the rest of the semester in an apartment off campus. I transferred to an out-of-state school for my spring semester and finished my degree there. Every night I dream of Lydia pulling herself through the tiny window, shimmying out onto the cold ledge, standing up and knowing there's nothing between her body and the terrifying abyss in front of her. I watch her look down 7 stories to the black pavement below and realize, though not accept, her terrible fate. I see the blind horror cross her familiar features. I hear her wildly pounding heart, desperately trying to race through every beat of the life she should have lived, and knowing it is only mere seconds. I watch her look back at me, and I watch her fall. It's been 9 years since that night. And every fall semester for 9 years I've called resident services to see which dorms are open for new student assignments. Riley is always open. The 7th floor is closed. This year life and work got in the way and I called much later than usual. I was put on hold immediately. Resident services. A man finally answered. "Were you the one asking about open rooms in Riley?" "Yes, that's me. We're entirely filled up and there's a waiting list for Riley. But, as it happens, you actually have great timing. I make no promises, but we may be able to get you in. We just got approval this morning." "Approval for what?" I said slowly. "We're opening up the 7th floor." Her name was Emma. That's what everyone called her, anyways. Sometimes they would call her Em, sometimes someone would slip up and call her Emily. She was a part of our group of girlfriends growing up in a large town, not quite big enough to be a city, but big enough that there was still privacy between neighbors. We called ourselves the Unbreakable Six because there was me, Summer, Mel, Nina, and Jules. And there was Emma. Emma started off as a practical joke by the other girls in the 4th grade. It was probably Jules that started it. She was always playing pranks of people. In high school, she even got suspended once for going too far and had to babysit for hours to buy that girl a new cell phone. Or maybe it was Summer, who always seemed too busy with music and band to think of such an elaborate prank. Or maybe it was Mel and Nina, who were best friends and could have lived without us, always conspiring together like they were twin sisters. Either way, I bought my lunch, cold-cut sandwich and carrot sticks and a pint of orange juice. I couldn't stand milk. It would account for how short I ended up being, and walked over to our lunch table. Jules looked excited, waving me over to them. "Latte. Look." I wasn't sure where I was supposed to be looking. "This is Emma. She moved here from Los Angeles. We lived far inland and into the boonies. Los Angeles was glitzy and glamorous and chic compared to the flat houses and half-rate high school football that was the only real source of entertainment in the area." What?" "Los Angeles, dummy," Jules said, rolling her eyes. "She's not in our class, she's in Miss Lark's, but she's the same grade as us. Isn't that cool?" I still wasn't sure where I was supposed to be looking. I sat down with my tray uneasily, wondering what I was supposed to see. "Who?" Summer jabbed me in the side. "You're being rude," she hissed quietly. Summer was all about rules and manners. "Say hi to Emma." I looked around our table, from Jules to Mel to Nina to Summer and back to Jules, who was waiting impatiently. "I don't know." I was weak. I wanted to fit in. I didn't get it. "Hi, Emma." They seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief, like I was making everything awkward. Charlotte's weird sometimes, but her brother has a Nintendo that he lets us play sometimes. They kept on talking, chatting about whatever 4th grade girls chat about, and I ignored it. If they wanted to play that prank, then that was fine. I wasn't going to buy into it. I was always a precocious child. I knew that what they were looking for was a reaction. That's how Emma became a normal part of our lives. It was crazy. We would buy her birthday presents, and they'd disappear like they were taken. I wonder how many candle-making kits and Mancala Games jewels had piling up in her closet after all these birthdays. One year, Mel even got Emma a really nice necklace, and that disappeared too. We never went to her house. I asked Nina about it when I was sure that Emma wasn't there. She gave me this scandalized look. Latte, don't be rude. Emma's family doesn't have that much money. She's embarrassed to let us come over. She told Mel that, who told me, and it makes sense. I mean, what she wears all the time. I mean, we still love her, we'll always love her, she's one of us. But don't rub in the fact that we can't go to her house. That's mean. After I was scolded so wholeheartedly by Nina, I didn't ask again. They were covering their bases really well, and by 7th grade, I had to accept that they were taking this prank all the way. It was weirdly comforting in a way. There was this silent friend that I never saw, but she was always around. We would leave seats open for her, and when we did the buddy system, someone always had Emma walk into the bathroom by herself. When we decided that we wanted to be lame and come up with a name for our group of friends, we decided on the Unbreakable Six, even though there were really only 5 of us. I was curious in sophomore year of high school when we were having a sleepover. Summer was at band practice late and Emma couldn't make it. She had to work on her science project, according to Mel. So I asked Jules, the likely mastermind behind it all, if you were going to write a story about Emma, like her biography, how would you describe her? Down to every detail? Jules loved stuff like that. She wanted to be a writer someday. Well, she's taller than you, which isn't hard. I threw a pillow at her that she dodged deftly. She's medium build. Jules dropped her voice to a whisper, even though she gained a little weight recently, but we're not gonna tell her, and she's still beautiful. And she has green eyes and brown hair, and she's got freckles. She hates getting her picture taken. She's nice, but quiet, and she dances really beautifully. I mean, you've seen her, right? Of course, that time a few months ago when we turned on some music and danced around together to practice dancing at homecoming, so we didn't look weird or do it wrong. We stopped after a while and oohed and ahed at empty space for a while. I didn't ask any more questions. I knew that they would keep up the charade for as long as they could manage. It was in our senior year of high school that it happened. I don't know why it set me off, not really. It was something little, something stupid. We were hanging out in Nina's pool, even though it was still too cold to swim. Teeth chattering and goosebumps rising on our skin, we were waiting for the jacuzzi to heat up to jump in. The cold sunlight cast a long shadow, and the wine coolers we snuck earlier was making that shadow seem menacing. It was annoying for me for reasons I can't place. "Look at Emma, Latte," Jules called. She wolf whistled and hooted, over the top like Jules always is. "Hot mama, look at that booty." I didn't know where to look, like always. Like for the past 9 years of my life, I didn't know where to look. Since the 4th grade at our lunch table, dancing in Summer's living room, homecoming, football games, at the park, in class, anywhere, I didn't know where to look because Emma wasn't there. That's when I snapped. "Fuck Emma," I screamed. "And fuck all of you. Have you been waiting for this?" The moment I completely lose my fucking mind. Well, here it is. I waved my arms around, manic and furious. Emma isn't real. Emma isn't fucking real. I looked at their confused faces. "Oh, you're gonna keep this up? I fucking hate you guys. You've always done this, made me the butt of your stupid prank for almost 10 years, guys. 10 years. I slipped a little on the wet concrete but regained my balance. "Fuck you, I hate you so much." Tears welled in my eyes, years and years of pent-up frustration finally spilling over. Emma was some stupid prank that got out of hand, and I can't believe that none of you ever had the balls to tell me that it was a stupid prank. No, it had to keep going. You had to keep laughing behind my back. It's not fair. Summer was furious. Latte, don't fucking be this way. Emma is right there and you're being a bitch. Why are you doing this? Are you mad? Mel spoke up in a tiny voice. Latte, you look hot too. I mean, you look good in your bathing suit too. Yeah, but don't take out your anger on Emma, God, Nina said, rolling her eyes. Nina walked over to the side of the pool and reached out a hand like she was rubbing someone's back. It's okay, Emma, Latte's just under a lot of stress right now, figuring out where she wants to go for college. Shut up. I howled miserably. Stop it, stop it, stop it. Emma isn't real. She's not there. How could you guys do this to me? They were starting to look scared. They were really invested in this prank. I wondered what the end game was. When were they going to start laughing? When were they going to jump up and say, gotcha? I had enough of this. If they wanted to play charades, then let's play charades. The next part was a blur. I don't remember it, not even now. But I walked over to where Emma was and I kicked at the air. I heard a scream and I slipped on the slick, wet concrete and hit my head. There was blood everywhere. There was so much screaming, but I kept on kicking and punching and fighting until I blacked out completely. I came to a day later in the hospital. My parents were there, and so were my friends. They were pale and tired and miserable looking. My heart panched. I must have really scared them. When my parents left, Jules approached me. She took my hand. She began crying. The others stared, crying too. I'm sorry, Latte, she wept. I'm really sorry. It was almost frightening, looking at the way my friends were. They were beside themselves in the privacy of the hospital room. I started crying too. I wasn't sure why, but I started stammering apologies too, like if we all said sorry things could go back the way they did. I'm sorry, I cried. Summer was the only one who didn't look like she forgave me completely. She looked at me, eyes red and cheeks pink and wobbly-chinned, and said, "Are you?" I didn't have to answer. The nurse came in to change the bandages on my head. For the rest of the year, no one mentioned Emma. Emma only belonged to our tight-knit group of friends, so there was no mention of Emma. One time, a cop came to the principal's office, and Mel and Nina were quick to drag us away. After the accident, I withdrew from everyone. I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't go to Summer's recital. I didn't go to Mel's birthday party. I didn't do anything. I didn't go to prom, just stared at the ceiling, wondering what had happened. Emma was in most of my life, and now she felt like a ghost. I graduated high school and left immediately to go to a university far away in Southern California, where the weather was always perfect and the beach was a 5-minute walk away. I started to recover. I realized that I was depressed after what had happened, understanding that my best friends chose a punchline over me. Unbreakable 6, yeah right. I got good grades, volunteered at an animal shelter, found a boyfriend. He was so nice to me, even when I got quiet when he asked about high school. He never pushed, just held me when I had bad days and made me pancakes. It was 4 years later when I was about to finish up college when I ran into an old classmate from high school. Her name was Annie. She hung out with a different crowd than me and my friends. Most people did. The 6, the 5 of us were a clique of our own, separated from everyone else. I ran into her in our apartment complex. It turns out that she was living there the whole time and we didn't know. I wasn't necessarily friends with her, but overreacted the way you do when you see someone that you haven't seen in a long time. It's been forever. Oh my God. I went to her apartment for coffee and saw that she was packing up her things. Moving back home for a while until I find a job, yuck. I saw a thick book on the sofa. Oh, yeah, that's our senior yearbook. I was flipping through it when I found it in my bookshelf. I didn't bother getting a yearbook. I didn't have friends at the end of high school, but I was curious to see what I looked like back then, if I had gained or lost weight, if my skin had gotten any better. I opened up the first page and was instantly confused. For Emma? I read aloud from the first page. It was a dedication. My mind raced. Was there someone named Emma in our year? Yeah, it's really sad what happened to her, Annie said, handing me a mug of hot coffee. I flipped through the yearbook, looking for a trace of Emma. Then, I found it. My heart stopped, mouth going dry. My hand shook as I held the yearbook, looking at the photograph. It was a picture of the Unbreakable Six. We stood with our arms slung around hips and shoulders, sticking close together for the photograph. There was Summer at the end, then me, then Jules, then Mel, then Nina, then... I had never seen this girl before in my life. Never. But there she was. I can't even remember getting this picture taken. She was right there at the end. Green eyes, brown hair, muffin top, shy smile, threadbare shirt, and ripped jeans, looking straight at the camera like the rest of us. She looked as normal as can be, just another teenage girl. Annie looked over my shoulder. Oh, there you all are. What did you call yourselves again? What happened to her? I couldn't even touch her photograph, just let my shaking finger hover over her face. Annie fell quiet. Well, I guess you might not really remember that well after your head injury. And you just kind of faded away from everything, stopped doing much at all. But Emma disappeared. Out of nowhere. The cops came by once to ask questions, but her parents were both poor and junkies, so no one really cared. Just another girl that disappeared. I left Annie and went back to my apartment, the one I shared with my boyfriend. He took one look at my face and started boiling some water for tea, grabbed a blanket to throw over my shoulders. I pulled away from him, locked myself in my room. I stared at the ceiling. I was 18 again, lost and confused. The girl's green eyes haunted me. Emma's eyes haunted me. I went on Facebook and found my old friends, my best friends, and I told them, please meet me back at home. It's important. I returned back to our big town little city, went to the newest Starbucks and waited. They trickled in, one by one. Jules, small-time blogger who works at an Italian restaurant until she made it big. Summer, brown and freckled from band camp, coaching kids for their field shows. Nina, the hot librarian at their old high school. Mel, her belly swollen with her second child, wedding ring secured to her left hand by her high school sweetheart. My friends were not the same, and neither was I. I cut to the chase. I couldn't spare a moment for small talk. What happened to Emma? They exchanged uneasy glances. They knew this was coming. Nothing, Jules said with finality. Emma wasn't real. She was just a trick, Nina said softly. She was a prank. I figured they might pull this shit. I reached into my bag and slammed the yearbook down on the table, making our drinks rattle and one fall over, spilling tea onto the ground. No one moved to try to pick it up. They stared at the yearbook instead. Emma was real, I finally whispered. Emma was real. What happened to her? Nothing. Cut the crap, Jules, Summer snapped. She turned to me. Latte, you killed Emma that day by the pool. You went nuts and kicked her and kept kicking her when you slipped and fucked up your head, and you bashed her head and she fell in the pool and it was too late to save her and we had to worry about you and... Summer. Jules shrieked, swatting her in the arm. I was silent, absorbing what Summer said. Mel spoke up in a tiny voice. Latte, we weren't going to let you go to jail. I looked up at my friends, tears running down my cheeks. Why? Nina reached across the table and took my hand. She squeezed it, hard. Because we're the Unbreakable Six. We don't break because one went crazy and another's dead. I excused myself to the restroom and wept for what seemed like hours. It couldn't have been that long, but there were angry knocks on the door from other patrons who needed the restroom. I sat there on the dirty floor, sobbing until I had cried everything out. I came out where my friends, my best friends, were still waiting. I sat down in my seat and faced them. I wanted to turn myself in. There was an outcry of different responses. Summer seemed willing, ready to have me turn myself in to the police. Jules yelled out about them all getting in trouble. Mel started to cry. "You don't have to," Nina said. "You don't have to. We got rid of all the evidence. We buried her far away where no one would find her." I want to turn myself in, I repeated firmly. "I killed her. I'll tell the cops that it was just me, that I buried her. Tell me where she is so I can tell them where I put her. None of you will get in trouble. It wasn't your fault." I thought I had finished crying. I thought I had nothing left, but I choked out what I wanted to say for so long. "I never saw her." They looked at me expectantly. "I never saw her, not even once." I thought it was just a big prank you were playing on me. I didn't want you to laugh at me. The girl in the yearbook, I had never seen her before. I just played along." Nina nodded. "I thought it was weird that you were always so cold to her. Like you didn't even acknowledge her." "She really liked you," Mel said. "She thought you were so smart that you were going to go out in the world and do amazing things. She would always talk about that." I felt as though my heart would burst. I swear I never saw her. Something must be wrong with me, but I never saw her or heard her. I cleared my throat. "Show me where you buried her." We got into Summer's car and drove out far, into a park in a different city. The park was huge and overgrown, like no one had been there to take care of it in a long, long time. I got out of the car, and left behind by a worker long ago was a rusty shovel. I took it with me. Jules led the way, deep into the park, deep through the trees, until we came to a small clearing. The dirt wasn't fresh, there were no markers or indicators, but the way my friends' faces paled at the sight, I knew this was it. Emma was there, under our feet. "I gotta see her," I whispered. I dug the shovel into the ground. "I gotta see her." Mel didn't want to see anything, so she and Nina left back for the car. Jules and Summer found different tools, a hoe and a rake, and we started digging. Blisters rose and popped on my hands from the old shovel, but I kept digging as beads of sweat rolled down my neck, my back. The three of us worked together in silence, digging up our best friend. Suddenly, Summer jumped back in disgust, throwing her hoe aside. Jules did the same, stepping out of the hole. We looked down. Summer gagged, covering her mouth and nose, and Jules shook her head at the sight. "Me?" I laughed and laughed and laughed, tears streaming down my face, laughing until it hurt as I looked down into an empty grave. It started about a month ago. I woke up in the middle of the night, thirsty as hell. As I stumbled to the kitchen for a glass of water, I noticed a sliver of light coming from Ethan's room. The door was cracked open, and I could see his small silhouette framed against the window. "Ethan?" I called softly, pushing the door open. "What are you doing up, buddy?" He didn't turn around. He just stood there, staring out into the darkness. "Ethan?" I tried again, a little louder this time. Finally, he looked at me, his eyes wide and unfocused. "Daddy, it's time," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. A shiver ran down my spine. "Time for what, bud?" But he didn't answer. Instead, he climbed back into bed and pulled the covers up to his chin. Within seconds, he was fast asleep. I checked my phone. 2:12 a.m. Weird, but kids do strange things sometimes, right? I tucked Ethan in and went back to bed, chalking it up to a random night terror or sleepwalking episode. The next night, I woke up again around 2 a.m. Call it parental instinct or just paranoia, but something made me check on Ethan. Sure enough, there he was at the window again. I checked my phone, 2:12 a.m. on the dot. This time, I didn't say anything. I just watched him from the doorway. He stood there, perfectly still, for exactly 5 minutes. Then, just as I was about to intervene, a sound pierced the silence that made my skin crawl. Knock. 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 3 sharp raps on our front door. Ethan didn't react. He just climbed back into bed like nothing had happened. With my heart pounding in my chest, I crept downstairs and peered through the peephole. The porch light illuminated an empty stoop. No one was there. I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe some drunk teenager playing a prank. But a nagging feeling in my gut told me something wasn't right. For the next week, the same thing happened every single night. Ethan at the window at 2:12 a.m. Knocking at 2:17 a.m. No one at the door. I tried talking to Ethan about it during the day, but he had no memory of getting up at night. He just looked at me with those big, innocent eyes and asked if we could have pancakes for breakfast. I was starting to lose it. I wasn't sleeping. I couldn't focus at work. Every night, I'd sit on the stairs, watching Ethan's door, waiting for 2:12 a.m. with a mixture of dread and morbid curiosity. One night, about 10 days in, I decided to do something different. At 2:10 a.m., I quietly entered Ethan's room and stood next to his bed. As the clock ticked over to 2:12, his eyes snapped open. He sat up, but when he saw me, he froze. "Daddy," he whispered, "you shouldn't be here." "Why not, buddy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Because," he said, his eyes darting to the window, "she's waiting." My mouth went dry. "Who's waiting, Ethan?" But before he could answer, the knocking started. Only this time, it wasn't coming from the front door. It was coming from the other side of Ethan's bedroom window. Knock. 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 The knocking stopped as suddenly as it had started. In the eerie silence that followed, I could hear my own ragged breathing and the frantic pounding of my heart. "Ethan," I whispered, my voice trembling, "get away from the window. Now." But my son didn't move. His eyes were fixed on something outside, something I couldn't see. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his small hand and pressed it against the glass. That's when I saw it. A hand on the other side of the window, mirroring Ethan's. Long, skeletal fingers with blackened nails. The skin was pale and waxy, like that of a corpse left too long in water. "Jesus Christ!" I yelled, lunging forward to grab Ethan. But as soon as my fingers touched his shoulder, he let out an ear-piercing scream that made me stagger backward. The hand outside the window vanished, and Ethan collapsed onto the floor, his body convulsing violently. I scooped him up, my mind reeling with panic. As I turned to rush him out of the room, my eyes caught something that made me freeze in my tracks. There, scratched into the window glass, were 5 words, "I'm coming for him, John." A wave of dread washed over me. How the hell did it know my name? I ran downstairs with Ethan in my arms, fumbling for my phone to call 911. But as soon as I hit the bottom step, every light in the house flickered and died. In the pitch darkness, I heard something that sent chills down my spine. Scritch! 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 The sound of nails dragging across wood, coming from every direction at once. "Daddy," Ethan whimpered, his small body trembling against mine, "she's inside now." I sprinted for the front door, my free hand outstretched in the darkness. But when I grabbed the doorknob, it was ice cold and slick with something wet. I yanked my hand back, feeling warm liquid dripping down my wrist. The coppery smell of blood filled my nostrils. "You can't leave, John," a voice whispered, so close I could feel fetid breath on my neck. It sounded like Marie, but wrong. Like her voice was being forced through a throat full of gravel. "We are family again." "You're not Marie," I choked out, backing away. "My wife is dead." A chilling laugh echoed through the house. "Dead? Oh, John. I'm so much more than dead." Suddenly, the lights flickered back on. I blinked, momentarily blinded. When my vision cleared, I saw her. Marie stood at the foot of the stairs. But it wasn't the Marie I remembered. Her skin was gray and bloated, her eyes sunken and filled with a sickly yellow light. Her once beautiful hair hung in wet, rotting clumps around her face. She wore the same dress we buried her in, now stained with dirt and God knows what else. Marie, I breathed, unable to believe what I was seeing. Her mouth stretched into an impossibly wide grin, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. I've come to take our son home, John. It's time for Ethan to join me. Ethan squirmed in my arms, reaching out towards the thing that looked like his mother. Mommy, he called, his voice a mixture of fear and longing. The creature's eyes locked onto Ethan, and she took a step forward. The floorboards creaked and squelched under her bare, mud-caked feet. No! I shouted, clutching Ethan tighter. You're not taking him. I turned and ran for the kitchen, my mind racing. Salt. I needed salt. Wasn't that supposed to work against spirits or something? As I fumbled through the cabinets, I could hear Marie's wet footsteps getting closer. The air grew cold, and the putrid stench of decay filled the room. Oh, John, her voice sing-songed from just outside the kitchen. You can't protect him forever. Ethan belongs with me now. I finally found the salt and turned around, ready to throw it. But what I saw made the container slip from my numb fingers. The creature let out an inhuman shriek. No! You can't send me back. I won't go alone. It lunged at us, its numerous arms outstretched. In that split second, I made a decision that would haunt me forever. I set Ethan down and kissed his forehead. I love you, buddy. Always remember that. Then, using all my strength, I shoved the creature towards the open door. But as it teetered on the threshold, one of its arms wrapped around my waist. I looked at Ethan, saw the terror and confusion in his eyes. Run, Ethan. Run upstairs and don't look back. The last thing I saw was my son's tear-streaked face as the creature and I fell through the doorway into the abyss beyond. I don't know how long I fell. Time seemed to have no meaning in that place of shadows and whispers. But eventually, I crashed onto what felt like solid ground. I opened my eyes to find myself back in my own basement. The old door had vanished, leaving only a blank wall. Sunlight streamed through the small windows. Morning had come. Painfully, I climbed the stairs, calling out for Ethan. I found him curled up on the living room couch, sleeping peacefully. When I woke him, he had no memory of the night's events. It's been a week since that terrible night. The scratches on Ethan's window are gone, as if they never existed. He no longer gets up at 2:12 a.m. To all appearances, our lives have returned to normal. But I know better. Sometimes, late at night, I hear whispers coming from the basement. And in my dreams, I see Marie, the real Marie, reaching out to me from beyond a door I can never open. I don't know if the creature will find another way back. I don't know if it's truly gone, or if it's just biding its time. All I know is that every night, I check on Ethan at 2:12 a.m. And every night, I pray that the knocking doesn't start again. That's it for tonight's video. Good night and be well. Until next time.